been playing a really what I think is a really cool game called Blacksmith: The Sand Kingdom. So it's the latest sim RPG. That's what I've called it. From Rideon. So it is published by Kemco. So Rideon made a game that was released in May 2019, at least in Western markets, called Morenian Tavern Story: Paddy and the Hungry God, which was very essentially this game feels like a direct sequel to it in terms of mechanics, but I don't know when the original release schedule was, because in a lot of ways this game feels like the first, and that was the sequel, and I'll kind of compare it a bit later. But basically, it's a blacksmith RPG. So some people may remember there's a game called Reciteer. I think that's how you pronounce it, where you run an item shop and you go out and you fight monsters and then you come back and sell your items in the item shop. It was like a PC indie game, really popular.
Yeah.
And there's also the Atelier games, which I've never played, that have a heavy focus on crafting. So this game is kind of in the vein of those, where it's an RPG, but the main hook of the game is you are a blacksmith with a shop. You're crafting all the equipment, your weapons and armor, and some other things, and then you're selling them, and then you essentially go through the loop. And the loop is very early on. They establish what that loop is, and it's not going to be for everyone, 100%. So you basically, I'd say you wake up in the morning, but it's more like you open the shop and close the shop. So you accept missions from like an adventurers guild, and it's almost just like a menu with different buildings on there. You go into dungeons, you collect materials, you complete the missions. Then you come back to your shop, you craft the weapons and armor, and you also complete missions from building that stuff. You put them on sale, and then you rinse repeat for like 30 hours. That's the loop. That's the whole loop of
Yeah, sounds like fun.
Of just going to dungeons, getting materials, coming back, and crafting. And I think the balance, I reckon, is probably about 80% of your time is in menus, crafting stuff, and 20% of your time is in dungeons, fighting monsters in a turn-based JRPG.
The more you talk about it, the more fun it sounds.
Look, that's why I said if you're into those games, if you love RPGs where you're in crafting menus a lot, and you're into kind of like really min-maxing because you also have a party that you have to build up as well. So it's not that you're just selling the stuff to progress the game. For that, you also have to kit yourself out. And it's actually pretty cool. So there's no set characters at the start. You set up your 5 characters, almost like a Western-style RPG. You select a class and a faith. The classes determine not only your battle skills, but also what equipment they can actually use. So eventually you unlock like I don't know if it's ninja class or something, so they use daggers, but they can't use heavy swords and things, right?
Okay.
Faiths have basically passive buffs, and you can swap at any time between class and faith. So they, you can select that stuff, but you can change them at any time, and you will need to change them over time as well. And as you complete more missions, you unlock more classes and faiths. So it's almost like a job system for Final Fantasy 3 and Final Fantasy 5. So it's actually pretty cool. As you level up as well, you unlock the ability to add a subclass. So each of your characters you'll have your main class, but the subclass allows you to use additional skills. I don't think it helps you equip more things, though. I think what you can equip is based on your main class, and more slots for passive skills and things. So when you're in the actual dungeon and walking around, and the rest of the game is just pretty much like a menus and things, whereas in the dungeons, you're actually walking around as Sprite in a 3D levels. Well, 3D levels, but it's top-down. And there's no random encounters, thankfully. That's an improvement, I think, from Morenian Tavern Story. And you go into battles with monsters, and it's like a 3x3 grid. And formation of your party is really, really important. And you really have to kind of, actually spend quite a bit of time thinking about how you set up everyone on the battlefield. And like all good RPGs, it's got an auto battle function, which is really, really great when you're just farming. So if you know that you're easily able to take any of the enemies, you can essentially just go into battle, quickly complete it, and then just move on to the next one. And there's a lot of variety of battle skills. I'm not going to get too far into that, but some of the bosses too do get quite tough, and you may actually need to go back to your shop and actually craft new equipment for your party that's specific for that boss. So an example would be one boss was invulnerable completely to physical damage, and 3 or 4 out of my 5 party members were focused on physical damage. So I had to go back and then craft them all weapons that had elemental attributes. So then I could take the boss down. So it's an example of where you actually need to think a bit about it. But the game is all about the crafting. So in total, there's about 194 different materials together. There's about 385 different pieces of equipment to craft, and about 177 different runes that you can get to put into that equipment. So like Rideon Tavern Story, there's a lot of great quality of life features in those menus. So I kind of sent you guys a couple of joke clips throughout the week of this is me for the next 40 hours, essentially just going through menus. But it's actually, honestly, if you like crafting in RPGs, it's actually really fun. I actually had a blast with all that stuff. And you can easily filter and sort. You can build stuff in bulk. You can sell stuff in bulk. They've made it as simple as possible. There's also an arena that you can go to in the town to just fight the monsters you need for the equipment, for the materials you need, so you don't have to go hunting them. So they've given you a lot of stuff. Graphically,
it sounds like you ran an eBay store simulator in a fantasy world.
Can I just defend it? Can I defend it for a second? Because this is not my kind of game at all. But I do understand what I would say is almost like a comfort food.
Dude,
this is definitely comfort food.
Yeah. Which is like, if it's in your alley and you just get it, it's almost like your brain switches off. You can just focus on this. This is how I feel like with Picross. I've got so many Picross games. I keep playing them all the time. Like any week, I probably would have played a Picross game just because I do it before I go to sleep, and it's really relaxing. So I can understand if that tickles your fancy. That's sort of that comfort.
I could see this. It's like, think about all the I don't know, football manager games, F1 manager. It's the same sort of thing. It can be quite fun actually when you get into that.
And you do have to balance a little bit. So your objectives are essentially to sell a lot of stuff, but also to get a lot of custom satisfaction. So you have to balance your markup. And it's really easy. Like, it's not complicated. You can basically say, okay, I'm going to put 20 of these fancy sword on sale, but I'm going to make the markup a bit lower, and then it'll make people happier. And then so you can kind of adjust stuff, or you could just fleece the hell out of everyone and make a whole lot of money. So graphically, look, it's very simple. The monster and character sprites, they're fun, but nothing to write home about. The character portraits are fine, but they're just stills. And the 3D dungeons are pretty bare bones. Like, remember, this is a very small developer, Japanese developer as well. But most importantly in this kind of game, the menus and the UI are really, really nice and clean. And they look great. So that's the most important part. The music's very forgettable, honestly. But to me, how does this compare to Rideon Tavern Story? So I loved Rideon Tavern Story. And that game felt very different in many ways. So it was, instead of it being a blacksmith, you were running a tavern, so it was all about cooking there, right? But the loop was the same. You went to dungeons, got stuff. But the reason why I like that game so much more is it felt more like a complete game. So that actually had your character walking around in in an actual town, and you could walk into your tavern, you could go to other towns to speak to NPCs. This game doesn't have that. It's just like a map with buildings, and then you go into the dungeons. So it's definitely, there's less fluff there. So if you're just interested in doing that stuff, you don't have to physically walk your character to a shop to go buy the materials you need. You just go to a menu, but it kind of loses the charm of it. And also in the dungeons themselves, there's no secret areas. It just feels like it's much more bare bones. So to compare it to anyone that liked Rideon Tavern Story, it kind of almost feels like this was the first game and that's the sequel. So that's that's the way it feels to me. But I had I had a blast with this game, but it's definitely not for everyone, 100%. Even for people that like RPGs and JRPGs, it's not going to be for everyone because the loop is so simple. You know, you have to, I think, really like games that are just designed around the same thing over and over again, you know, and if you like that thing, it's great. If you're like, okay, not great, you're going to get bored very quickly. And it's the one good thing over Rideon Tavern Story is that this game is way less of a grind. For anyone that wants to get it complete 100%, that had a huge end game grind where you had to go out and fight 500 of each enemy type, and that stuff is way quicker. Like, essentially you can unlock everything just through the natural course of play. So yeah, yeah, I think if you like liked Recettear and the Atelier games, the crafting components, I think you'll probably have a good time with this game. But yeah, there is one PSA I have to say though, and I got so pissed off I thought I'd have to replay my 40 hours again. If you're going for 100% completion, make sure that you've got a thief in your party, because there's, like a lot of RPGs, they've got a bestiary or bestiary or whatever, and you've got to fill that 100%. And I'm like, okay, I'll just get that. I'll kill the enemies and get it to 100%. And I beat the last endgame super boss, and it was at 80%. And I'm like, I've killed every monster in this game. You've also got to steal from every single monster in the game to add to the percentage of that. And I thought I'd screwed myself because it didn't seem like you could replay the bosses. And so you got to steal from every boss as well. So there is a way to replay bosses and do that, but just as the PSA, just steal from every enemy and boss as you play in the game if you really want the 100%. So, yeah.
I love the language that you have. You go, I thought, oh shit, I have to go back and play it all. No, it's like I want to.
You always say that, and I don't
enjoy that.
I think you don't understand context.
No, I do understand context. It's just I'm always a stickler for words and the meaning of words.
If you want 100%, you have to. Like, again, context. But yeah,
if you like feel breathing. You have a choice, yeah, exactly. If you feel you have a choice in life.
The one last thing I'll say,
and you choose to get 100%.
The one last thing I'll say about this game is that, don't think this is a cookie cutter, crappy RPG Maker style game like a lot of Kemco published games. This is very different. Those two Rideon games, Blacksmith Sand Kingdom and Meridian Tavern Story, are very different, and they're easily the two best games that they've published on modern platforms. So.
Nice. So what would you give this out of 10?
I'd probably give this a 7 out of 10. Just like Mario 3D World's IGN.
You should go work for IGN. I was going to say, yeah, you should go work for them.
Well, they literally gave Knack 2 7.2. So according to Cam Shea, Knack 2 is a better game than Super Mario 3D World.
Can we get Cam on this?
Bowser's Fury.
Are we big enough yet to get Cam on this?
Definitely not.
Okay, just asking.
Maybe if we do a feature on Hyper, that's about it.
That's true. And then we can refer back to me shitting.
I don't know. I reckon if we can reach out to the guy and say, "Hey, we've got this podcast. Do you want to spend 10 minutes justifying your?"
Oh yeah, he's totally gonna do that.
That's great. That's a great pitch.
One of us is really pissed.
No. And can I just reiterate? I am not attacking him as a person. He's a cool guy.
No,
I've followed a lot of other things. I have an issue with the way he's argued the 7 out of 10. It doesn't make sense to me based on the review. So, and I get it's subjective. He can give it 7 out of 10, but I look at it and go, IGN's approved that. They're happy with that. So, seems very strange to me.
Can we get you two to just battle it out in Smash Brothers or something? Or
he'd lose if that's the case.
I don't know. We'll pick an even ground. We'll pick an even ground. And you two can banter and fight it out. No. What's the point? Might as well not even put the controller down before you play.
So 7 out of 10. Was there anything else you wanted to mention, Swinny, before we close out the show?
No, just it's. I think it's like $25 or $30 around that range. So it's just maybe just watch some reviews, watch some gameplay, see if it's what you might be interested in. Yeah.
You don't need any other review outside of Swinny's review.
No,
exactly.
7 out of 10.
7 out of 10. So decide based on what Swinny's saying.
Go get it. Or don't.
And his reputation at the Big Week in Gaming podcast. All right, let's close out the show. So